أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الله الكبير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله الكبير. We are grateful to God for giving us this opportunity, and this is not by accident. This is by divine design and providence that we are here, and we are hopefully enjoying ourselves at this great time that we have, and it should be the highlight of our week. And so we are humbled and honored by this favor that God has bestowed upon us, and it's a huge blessing, and so we should never forget this, and that God has chosen us to be here today, and He put the will in our hearts, and we are indebted to Him eternally and grateful to Him forever. And so we have to make sure that we are grateful enough that we are in a position that we believe that this is not our doing, this is God's doing. And so we should make sure that we understand that fact. Again, gratefulness is a godlike quality, and so we are humbled by this, and we are also grateful to God for everything that He has given us and He gives us on a daily basis. So what I wanted to discuss with you is that I want to go through this and highlight a few things that a lot of people are ignorant about who God is, and so they have 99 names for God, and they're acting as though they are doing Him a favor by calling Him those names, and so we went through the idea of healer. And we realize that it's not a big deal, okay? It's a commonplace thing for God. There is no sickness in heaven. There is no sickness in God's kingdom. It's not an eternal thing, okay? So He gives it to Jesus. He gives it to some doctors, and they become healers, okay? It's a fleeting thing. It happens only in this world. And this world was created because we made a mistake. Okay, so I'm going to give you another shock today. God is not the resurrector. Okay, God resurrects, but He is not the resurrector. They're two different things. Understand that very carefully. God is not the giver of death. He puts people to death, and He brings them back to life. But He is not the giver of death, and He's not the giver of life. It's two different things. One is a subject, the other one is doing something. Okay? I'll bring you an example. Okay, so it may be very difficult for people to understand this because they think that they're doing God a favor. Believe me, those people who assigned those 99 names to God, they thought that they're doing Him a favor too. Okay, it's not doing God a favor. We have to call Him with the names that He tells us to call Him in the Quran, and no more. We cannot invent names, okay, and attribute them to God. If we do that, we are just as guilty as somebody who says, well, God is the sewer cleaner, okay, because He ultimately cleans the sewer anyway. So He's the sewer cleaner. Example, okay? I'm a physicist. I also do programming, but I'm not a programmer. I don't want to be called a programmer because that's not who I am. Okay? Understand this very carefully. Okay? This is very important for people to understand who God is. Think about it. if he was the giver of life and giver of death, means this goes eternally. When he's the all-merciful is for eternity. He created life and death because of the mistake that we made. They did not exist. It's not an eternal thing. Okay? Healing to do what? Do you think you're going to get cancer when you're in heaven? Inshallah? The people in hell are going to have all kinds of problems. But think about what we are saying. Think about it very carefully before you say something. It's very important for us to understand who our God is. When God says that He is the all-merciful, the all-gracious, that goes for eternity. That existed before life and death were created. That had nothing to do with it. So He gave two extremes to human beings. خلق الموت والحياة. So He created death and life. So He created death, which is not part of Him. Okay. When He puts you to death, you are absent. The absence of God there. Can you imagine that? How lonely that is? How scary that is? And we subconsciously, we know that somehow. That's why people want to avoid death. Okay. And on the other hand, then he gives the human beings one of His attributes, Hayy, al-Hayy, the living. Okay. So those states of existence did not exist before the mistake that we made. How did you feel about that? Think about it, okay? So God says He created death and life, not the other way around. So when Adam was in heaven, what state of existence he had? Was he alive? The answer is no. He had a different state of existence. Once he made a mistake, he was put to death. Okay? You and I were all put to death. And all of those creatures who made a mistake, which is a very, very, very small component of God's creation, okay, they were all put to death. And then God gives them life. Okay? So the consequence of that mistake was death and life. Okay? That's why He says, I am the creator of a human. Not I created a human. I am the creator. A timeless statement. It doesn't have the tenses in it. Think about it very carefully. It doesn't have the tense in it. When you say Al-Ba'ith, which is, if you look at the 99, that's one of His names, Al-Ba'ith, the resurrector. Okay? That's a timeless statement. You cannot call Him that. That's not what He does. Okay? He doesn't need to resurrect. There is no need for resurrection. Because people are not going to die in heaven. In paradise, nobody dies. And God says they never taste death. Why would they need to do that? Can you imagine that? I mean, the nonsense is it's so aggravating to me. And I have to keep quiet because people think that somehow they're doing God a favor, that calling Him this and that and the others. It's not. You're insulting them. Okay? And so we have to learn from the Quran what the Quran is saying. When God says Allahu Samad, He is the eternal God. Okay? That's the last verse containing the word God. That I'm going to talk about it in the second unit of this prayers today, inshallah. Okay. But That's the beauty of it. It's eternal. Okay. And eternity doesn't mean time, no time. It means timeless. There's no time. There's no component of time. We're used to this. We're used to this kind of reference points, time and this and that, the others. Okay, these dimensions that we have that God has created for us. As I said, as conventionalization, that we can actually measure time and find the stars and planets and things like that as points of reference. Okay. I think God needed this. It's completely useless to God. Okay. To you and I, it makes sense, okay, because we look at this and for the longest time, people went around and they thought that this is the so-called inertial frame with respect to fixed stars. And then they realized, Einstein came in and realized there is no fixed star. And so he said, he brought relativity, which works. Okay? Even we realize that conventionalization is only for the ignorant. Let's put it that way. Okay? And so we still have that problem. We still have that problem. So many years after all of these are gone, okay, we still have problems. And we still calling God names that it's not befitting him. Okay? So there's even as far as God the Father. I mean, can you imagine this? The absurdity of this? So as I said, oh yeah, the Father is to be respected, so that's it. You're doing him a favor by doing this. No, you're insulting him. Okay? So we have to understand this. And so I really wish from the bottom of my heart that I can transmit this to you guys. This understanding that I have, I can transmit it to you. These are all based on the Quran. Okay? The one, his name is Al-Mumit. You look at that, Al-Muhyi, Al-Mumit, Al-Muhyi, the giver of death. Huh. Yeah, he created death because of the mistake that we made. See? He's not the giver of death. The mistake that we made, the wages of sin is death. That's what we have to understand. That was of our own doing that happened. Not God. God is not doing that. Okay? And then, as I said, all of these are passing, fleeting. Because we're in a dimension that actually these things happen, and then we think that, yeah, well, this is not going to happen that way. We're in a dimension that time is a component, and then time passes on, people get closer to death and they die. Okay? And God says those people who are righteous, they will not go through the second death. It's very clear about that. So if you're righteous, he will not put you to death. That is not the wages of your sin, because you haven't sinned. The wages of sin is death. Okay? We cannot be wrong in these terms with God. We have to be very, very careful. Okay? In the big picture, God does everything. Of course he does. Okay? But he's not the doer of these things, and we have to be very careful. Okay? So anyway, so if you look at that, as I said, all of these ignorant things that people attribute to God, that he is the doer of this and this and this, those are subjects. Subject means doer of something without time. Okay? If you've forgotten your grammar, go and read it, what grammar is actually. What is a subject? What's an object? Okay? What's a tense? Past, present, and future? You have to learn those things and see what the Quran says. When it says he does things, of course he does things, but he's not the doer of that. There's two different things. I know a lot of people, these are sharks, and oh, how could it be? No. And those words that are there, then they have reference to the Quran. You go to reference to the Quran, the word doesn't exist. Because that's not who he is. God says, يَبْعَثُ مَنْ فِي الْقُبُورِ. He resurrects those who are in the grave. Do you think these graves are eternal? No. These graves are for a specific period of time. That's what God says. Okay. So if somebody's dead, needs to be resurrected, obviously. Okay. But in heaven, there are no graves. There are no dead people. There is no death. Okay. They would not taste death except the first one. That we made a mistake, so we remember that one. We said, oh my God, that was so bad. What we had to go through. Okay? So as a reminder, that still exists. So please be very careful, okay? Be very careful about these things. And these are very important points that I'm trying to make, and they are all from the Quran. And we have to understand the Quran and understand who God is in order to do this. Because some of those things that they are saying that either are very commonplace stuff, it's not worth taking pride in, okay? Or they're an insult. They're an insult to God. Pure and simple. Nothing but an insult. Okay. So I'm going to stop here and we'll finish this unit. Allahu Kabir.